So throughout the year, I've been sharing with you some of my favorite things, whether it's favorite scripture stories or favorite principles from the spiritual path or favorite teachings that support what we understand spiritually that come out of science. And I've been sharing with you as well some of my favorite spiritual teachers. One of the things I deeply love about unity is how broad we can be and how very deep we can be. Though we have our roots in Christianity, we recognize and value the wisdom, the perennial wisdom that is found in all the world's spiritual traditions and religions. And so today I want to share with you one of my favorite teachers, and that is Lao Tzu. How many of you are familiar with the Chinese teacher Lao Tzu? Lao Tzu is attributed with writing what is called the Tao Te Ching. Have any of you read the entire Tao Te Ching? It's actually a much easier read, much quicker read, and I think a beautiful read, especially in comparison to our own Bible, which can be very, very difficult to understand, and a lot of things in there that you simply just cannot take literally. The Tao Te Ching is the second most translated sacred text in all the world in all time, second only to the translation of the Bible. The Tao Te Ching, Tao means the way. The Tao Te Ching is a book that attempts to explain and teach the way of life. It is attributed, as I said, to Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu was not actually a real name. Lao Tzu was an honorific given to the man, and it means old master. Lao Tzu he lived about 600 BCE. He did not want to codify his teachings. He did not want to write a text. And he had a very clear reason why he didn't want to put down his spiritual ideas, his spiritual practices or philosophy. Can you guess why? He had a real concern that if he put his ideas about the way of life, the flow of life down in writing, that it would become a creed or a dogma, and he did not want that. I'm reminded of Charles Fillmore, the founder of Unity, who did not really want unity to become a dogma or a creed. In fact, we don't have dogma, we don't have creed. He was even reluctant for unity to become a religion. You may or may not be aware that when the Fillmores founded Unity, they had no thought that they were founding a movement. They just were working with spiritual practices and ideas that were helping them to heal their bodies physically and to improve the quality of their lives. And in fact, in the very beginning, when they held their teaching times, they did not teach on Sunday morning. They saw unity as a supplement to whatever religious tradition a person was part of. So their teaching gatherings happened on Saturday evening. So if you were Jewish, you could go to temple on Saturday morning. If you were Christian, you could go to church on Sunday morning. I'm reminded of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who has said if scientific analysis were to conclusively demonstrate certain claims in Buddhism to be false, then we must accept the findings of science and abandon those claims. Both these men reserved the right to change their mind. Both these men, including Lao Tzu, had a concern about rigidity of teaching. And the very words used to describe Lao Tzu's teachings, the Tao Te Ching, encapsulates this idea of the flow of life. So if he was reluctant to write anything down, how is it that we have this book called the Tao Te Ching? It's available in many different translations. My personal favorite is a translation done by Stephen Mitchell. By Stephen Mitchell, you may or may not be aware that he is married to Byron Katie. Byron Katie. Could do a whole story about the beauty of that synchronicity and that relationship and the richness of their practices and their teachings. So how is it that it came to be written down, these 81 verses? Well, as Lao Tzu is nearing the end of his life. It is said, legend said, that he became very disheartened with humanity, that he didn't think humanity was on the right path, and he saw what we might call the evil or the bad of humanity, and he had kind of removed himself from society. And as he was ending his life, or he knew his life was coming to an end, it said he went on a journey, and he came to the edge of the territory, the edge of the kingdom, and was about to leave, and the gatekeeper said to him, "Before you leave, would you please put your ideas down in writing for posterity's sake?" And he said, "Okay." And so we have 81 teachings from Lao Tzu on the way of life. Now, there's no way that in the time I have on a Sunday morning that I can give you 81 teachings. I'm only going to give you a few of the teachings categorized by themes. The themes are themes that I've come up with. I've read the Tao Te Ching many, many times, and there seem to me to be certain recurring messages in these many different verses. Here are just 3 themes that I see when I read the Tao Te Ching. That Lao Tzu is trying to encourage us to live life better, have a happier, more fulfilling life by, number 1, observing and learning from nature. Number 2, that self-mastery is an absolute critical component of living a life that is joy-filled and happy and harmonious. And thirdly, that the personal practice of patience is a high value, high virtue to be learned and to embody. So now let me go back and share just a few of the sayings from the Tao Te Ching that fall under each of these themes. The theme of observing nature and learning from it, the theme of self-mastery, and the theme of the practice of patience. Observing and seeking to understand life by noticing nature. One of his sayings is this: when spring comes, the grass grows by itself. Think about that for a moment, because I chuckle when I read that too. When spring comes, the grass grows by itself. In those very few simple words, what do you think he might be suggesting we learn? When spring comes, the grass grows by itself. I think that in part what he is suggesting we learn is that there is a natural flow to life. That there is an ebb and there is a flow. There is a time, Ecclesiastes we read, a time for every purpose, a time for every season of under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to harvest that which is planted. When spring comes, the grass grows by itself. There is a natural timing. We really can see it when we observe nature. But remember, his point is observe nature to learn about yourself, to begin to recognize that even in one's personal life, there is a natural flow. There is timing, and it is not always the same pace. There are periods of your life where it's going to feel as if things are moving very, very quickly and everything is falling into place very, very fast. And Lao Tzu would suggest, pay attention to that. Don't fight that speeded up experience of your life. Flow with that, because there will also be the experience of its opposite, of a slowing down. Notice that. And move with that rhythm and flow. I'm reading a book right now written by the same man who wrote The Untethered Soul. I think his name is Michael Singer. It's leaving my head right now for sure. But the name of the book is The Surrender Experiment. And it's all about his experience of surrendering to and trusting that there is a wisdom in life itself. When I say life itself, I mean life with a capital L. that there is a wisdom and an intelligence to life itself, that when we will take the time to look at it and to feel into it, we will find that things seem to fall into place in the most amazing way without us needing to effort quite so much or stress so much or push or force. It's what the Buddhists would call effortless effort. Going with the natural flow. Going with the flow does not mean rolling over, playing dead. It does not mean just agreeing with whatever everybody else is doing. That is not what going with the flow is. It is the flow not of other people, but the rhythm and flow of life. When spring comes, the grass grows by itself. Or this one, he says, the softest things in the world can overcome the hardest things. Think about that one. The softest things in the world can overcome the hardest things. Water. What happens to a steady drip, 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 drip of water on rock over time? What happens? It will completely erode the rock. It will leave its path, not by force, not by brute force, but by its steady, gentle, consistent dripping over time. That's a piece of the patience lesson as well. The softest things in the world can overcome the hardest things. Love, which is often looked at as something super soft, which in a way it is, but in another way it is not that at all, because love can break through and overcome stiffness of the heart, hardness of the heart. I know you have experienced or you have seen beautiful demonstrations of those who have been able to find a deep capacity for unconditional love in the face of some of the most horrific situations and transcend any experience of hatred or division through the sheer embodiment of genuine love. The softest things in the world can overcome the hardest things in the world. Love can do what no force or violence can ever do. The second theme, the theme of self-mastery, and how I appreciate that in this teaching called the Tao Te Ching, a teaching on the way of life, how to live life, that a central message again and again is a message that points us back to ourselves and mastering ourselves. We live too much in a culture and a society that would suggest that we keep looking outside of ourselves and fix other people and fix other things out there, when every deep and true and great spiritual practice or tradition would suggest just the opposite, would suggest that we go deep within ourselves and we begin to work at that level. Lao Tzu would refer to it as self-mastery. I'm sure you've read or have heard these words from the Tao Te Ching. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. Take those in for a moment. Knowing others is intelligence. It's valuable, is it not? It's valuable to know others, to know something about how human nature functions. That's a value. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is wisdom. In some ways, I think it's easier to know others than it is to know yourself. Mastering others is strength. We could do that really by fear, by guilt, by manipulation. Those are some of the emotional ways we can master another. We can certainly master, temporarily, others, not just by emotional manipulation, but by physical force. But have you noticed that that doesn't work. Have you noticed that the wars to end war just haven't worked? Have you noticed that? You're very quiet. This is not a political speech. This is a spiritual speech. Force can only change things temporarily. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. Mastering yourself is true power. In some ways, it seems easier to master another person than it does to work at the individual level. One of the reasons I have utmost respect for the 12 steps is because they are absolutely sound, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and core to the teaching, besides practice, is referring one back to oneself, the fourth step, to take a fearless, personal moral inventory. Personal, what does that mean? It's not checking up on your neighbor. What is your neighbor doing? Are they practicing forgiveness? Are they being loving and kind? Have they dealt with their bigotry or racism or selfishness or any of those things? Because that can be really tempting to do, right? But it's what? What about me? Where am I? Where are the dark spots inside of me? Where are the things that I need to heal, the changes that I need to make? Mastery, knowing others is intelligence, knowing yourself is true wisdom, mastering others is strength, mastering yourself is true power. To master oneself, to know oneself requires some time in honest, not brutal, but honest self-reflection and a consistent practice of awareness, a consistent practice of awareness. Another teaching out of this, what I call this theme of self-mastery. Lao Tzu writes, when I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. It's been my observation that a great number of people tend to live out of their personal history and not a personal vision. It's been my observation that a great number of people tend to live out of their personal history, their personal story, and not out of their personal vision. A vision is about what is possible. What is possible? To really live into my vision, I have got to let go of the past. I have got to stop holding myself hostage to the past. I've got to stop feeling like and acting like a victim. I have got to stop blaming. I've got to start healing and then be done with it so I can be propelled and compelled toward the vision that is real for my life. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. And then on to the third, the theme of patience. Can I ask a question? I'm going to anyway. Do any of you, and I mean this sincerely, because if you have mastered this, I'd like to have lunch with you. Now be honest though, okay? Do any of you feel like you've completely mastered patience? I heard somebody say yes. If I asked your spouse, would they agree? You know, long lines, traffic, things not being done on time when you were promised they were done on time. I haven't personally met anyone that truly has mastered patience. Huh? Your mother has. All right, Fran, I'll sit with you. I'll sit with you. To master patience, Lao Tzu said that nature does not hurry, yet accomplishes everything. Nature doesn't hurry, yet accomplishes everything. To understand that there is a different way of moving through life than always on the fast pace, then there is a different way to move through life with the ebb and flow of the unfolding of your life. That there is a way to be with things that don't work the way you want them to work when you wanted them to work. To me, is to really demonstrate the deepest, most exquisite example of patience. That in the absence of patience, we do ourselves physiologically, emotionally, and relationally a tremendous amount of damage. In a way, to me, impatience feels like one foot on the accelerator and the other foot on the brake. What would happen if you drove your car that way for any length of time? It's gonna break down. What do you think happens inside our bodies when we live life with an energy of impatience, which I really think is very much like that example I just gave of one foot on the gas pedal and one foot on the brake? What do you think is going on inside the body? Would you say it's beneficial to the body? No, I think it's a way of describing a very stressful life. There's a great deal of stress that is, or impatience and stress are very keenly linked to each other. How about in our relationships if we are impatient with other people? Does that work very well for you? Have you found that when you're impatient, people just really love to be with you? They just really want to spend a lot of time with you and they want to do a lot of stuff for you? Or do you find that they want to back away from you and get as far away as possible? This idea of the practice of patience points us back again to ourselves. First and foremost, by being aware of when are those times that I typically lose my patience. And what's going on circumstantially around me so that I can begin to identify with greater clarity what those triggers are. And in the moment that I identify what those triggers are, and in the moment I become aware, to stop for just a split second and remind myself that in that pause moment is my ability to make a different choice. And sometimes it can be as simple as, in that pause moment, taking a deep breath in. Let's do that together now. And letting that breath go. And in that very moment, asking a simple question like, right in this moment, am I really okay? Regardless of whether things are going the way I thought they should, or people are behaving the way I thought they should, or stuff is getting on time the way I was counting on, in this moment, right here and now, as I take that breath, am I okay? What do you think the answer 99.999% of the time is going to be, if we're honest? Oh, that was a really anemic response. The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Lao Tzu, and I'm going to wrap it up here, also writes in the context of, I'm saying in the context of patience, the importance of dealing with things early on. So rather than waiting for things to get big in our lives and then meet them or then deal with them, to deal with them when they are small, to make the corrections that are necessary to make earlier on rather than later on. And then let me close with just one more quote from him. He says, "In dwelling, live close to the ground." We might say that's a little bit like an environmentalist or a naturalist now. Live close to the ground. Live a little more simply. In dwelling, live close to the ground. In thinking, keep to the simple. In thinking, keep to the simple. In conflict, be fair and generous. Generous, I don't think he's talking about giving stuff, but generous of the heart. In conflict, be fair and generous. In governing, don't try to control. We might say today, for most of us, in leading, don't try to control. In work, do what you love. In work, do what you love. And in family life, be completely present. Those sound like very modern words and instructions, do they not? A lot to take in and to consider practicing. Namaste.